Hello and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Monday, the 1st of July. Is that right? Is June gone already? Well, if only I had some kind of technology that could verify that for me. Welcome in, everybody. Let me make sure that everybody can see and hear me okay before I start or continue. I've already started. Before I continue with today's broadcast, and a quick hello to Stoonley Sand and Eddie Casanova, John Anderson, Carlos F., Richard Quick, some of the early folks here into the chat room. L joins us. Welcome in. And I need to have, you know what I need to have? I need to have a Coke. That's what I need right now. Yes, that's what I need right now. It's been busy. Things are happening, and wasn't even sure I was going to make it on today, but here I am. So sorry about that for some of you. And for everybody else, welcome in. Welcome in. And is everything in sync? Can you see and hear me okay? Are my lips in time? Or does this appear to be a dubbed Japanimation? And Tony Wallows contributed $14.99. Thank you, Tony, and for your earlier contribution as well. Tony has ponied up the cost of shipping that X299 to him, which I didn't ask him to do, but he insists. So I will get that out to you very soon. Coke is bad. Yeah, so am I. Russ Franzen, Jonathan Mayberry, Jamie Cromwell, welcome in, guys. Patrick Manny and Robert Jones confirm everything is in sync, as does Jason Simmons. Very good, guys. Thank you so much. Let me tell you what I'm doing today. If you recall, if you've been subscribed to the channel for a few weeks, you will have seen my video review of the Orico versus Sabrent NVMe to USB adapters. Furthermore, if you've been watching my videos, you saw my review of the Silverstone SATA M.2 to USB adapters. Now I realize some of you may think to yourselves, what language is this guy speaking? I assure you this is all just simple English. They're industry terms that describe a certain kind of hardware, in this case storage. And there are differences in the storage with regards to performance. For example, in the first video I did on these M.2 adapters, I covered the product from Silverstone, these little adapters I've got here on the counter. And these are the MS09. And the MS09 from Silverstone is just a way of taking an M2-based SATA storage drive and putting it into an external enclosure like you might do a physical hard disk drive, but the enclosure would obviously have to be larger than what you're putting in it. That's not rocket science, right? So here's the Silverstone. It's got a little switch on the back. We slide it up. There's the USB port. You remove the 4 screws because it's empty inside. M.2 drive is not included. You buy whatever M.2 SATA that you want to buy. You fit it in there. That's it. They come in different colors. There's one in black. And they even come in a smaller size for the smaller M.2 drives. Although the smaller M.2 drive will fit inside of these enclosures if you want the most portable storage that you can get. That's also very fast. Then you want to search for the 2242 size. That's 22 millimeters wide, 42 millimeters long. These are the same width, 22, but they go as far as 80 millimeters in length. And 2280 is the most common size, form factor, if you will. We like to use that word in the computer industry. We don't like to say size. We say footprint. We say form factor. We, being nerds, engineers, we like to make up words even though we already have words that already exist that properly describe. It doesn't really justify a higher salary or make us feel smarter than everybody else. So the form factor or footprint, if you will, is available in the 2242 size. But because manufacturers don't sell a lot of the 2242 size devices, the 2280s are the easiest to find, and therefore more price competition So you'll find these are often less expensive. And when I'm waving this at you, I'm referring to what I put inside of it, which is all described in the video I did on these in the link below this video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Now, if you don't know the difference between an M.2 SATA drive and an M.2 NVMe drive, I also have a video describing that difference. To the naked eye, they look nearly identical, but their price and performance are not identical and not even close. You cannot put an NVMe drive into a SATA enclosure. It's not going to work. And you wouldn't want to buy a SATA enclosure and put an expensive NVMe, non-volatile memory express. You don't want to put that into even if you could, you wouldn't want to. Wouldn't make any sense. So like I said, if I had an M.2 SATA and an M.2 NVMe in my hands, a trained eye could tell them apart. It's sort of like looking at a Mustang and a Shelby Mustang, or a Hennessy Mustang. Or it's like looking at a Dodge Challenger and a Dodge Hellcat Challenger. They look to the naked eye, to somebody with an untrained eye, it looks like the same car. But when you get in and you push the pedal, they're not alike. And the price tags are not alike. Now, when I did the review for the Silverstone M2 enclosures, they did not have an NVMe enclosure available at that time. Later on, I followed up by doing a review of some NVMe enclosures from other manufacturers. One, Orico, and the other manufacturer, Sabrent. And that video, as I already said, is in the video notes below this video. And that goes through how you open it up to put your drive in and how they perform. In general, the NVMe, when put in an external enclosure and plugged into a modern USB 3.1 interface on which you're only going to have like a 300 series or 200 series chipset on the Intel side, something, it's got to be modern within the last 3 years anyway, you can achieve speeds up to 10 gigabits per second, which roughly put means that, I'm going to put this in layman's terms. For the cost of the enclosure in the drive for an M2 SATA, and assuming all things being the same, let's call it 500 gigabyte. No, let's call it 1 terabyte. So for 1 terabyte, you can put this together in SATA with the enclosure for about $125, $130. And you'll achieve sequential read speeds of up to 540, 550 megabytes per second. Now, whether or not you have any point of reference for that, just remember, think of it like miles per hour, right? 10 miles an hour is slower than 90 miles an hour, even if you don't know what a mile is. Using the new Silverstone MS11 or any NVMe enclosure that supports USB 3.1 Type-C Generation 2, you're looking at speeds of a little over 1,000, 1,050 megabytes per second, so about twice the speed. At what cost? Well, you're looking at a cost for the drive. In this case, you can buy the cheapest drive available, which I have here. This is the Intel SSD 6. It's called the 660p, 660p like Peter. And you can get a 1 terabyte drive for, I saw them on sale for $84. So in some cases, it's actually cheaper to go faster. However, this is where it gets a little convoluted. This is actually a very slow NVMe drive. These NVMe drives can actually perform up to 3,600 megabytes per second. But those at a 1 terabyte size will set you back a couple $100 just for the drive, and you need to make sure your motherboard supports it. So our limitation in the case of an external enclosure is the speed of the interface that we're plugging it into. So in this case, USB 3.1 Gen 2 has a speed limit, a maximum throughput of 10 gigabits per second, which is about 1,000 megabytes a second, which is a little more than double the 500 to 550 that you get out of an M2 SATA. So M2 NVMe versus M2 SATA. Now, internally, inside of the computer, you're still going to hit the same 550 on SATA, but like I said, you can hit up to 3600, but not with this. This will hit maybe 2000, maybe. What I've got here is a 2 terabyte. I mean, if you're going to do it, let's go big or go home. So that little stick right there, that's our M2 drive in NVMe format, which you can tell by where the notch is, and it's 2,000 gigabytes. 2,000 gigabytes is 2 terabytes. And that should be good for putting backups, and it should be fast. Now, it is backwards compatible with USB 3, 2, and 1, but it will only run at the speeds that the USB port can handle. Just like a Ferrari isn't going to do 200 miles an hour on a road that is perhaps designed for 25 miles an hour. It's not a limitation of the car, it's a limitation of the road. In this case, USB is always going to be, for now, our bottleneck. Someone say bottleneck? Are you following me? There's no point in spending top dollar for a high-end M.2 NVMe drive and then cripple it by putting it in one of these enclosures. But there's more to it than just performance. John Yasuda, a fan of the channel, contacted me and asked me to build him a new computer. His X299 system had died on him, which he had replaced when his X99 system died on him. And when it died on him, he didn't see it coming. He didn't have a backup, current backup. And he asked me, if I mail you the X299 system, you can keep it, but can you take all the data off of that NVMe drive? I have no way to extract the data. You'd have to get another motherboard and plug it in. The way the drive plugs in, it goes directly into a motherboard socket. And I said, I have an idea. What if we get you an enclosure? And I just take the NVMe drive, put it in the enclosure, and mail the whole thing to you. And then when you get it, all you have to do is plug it into your USB port, and there's all your data. I mean, it's not going to boot to Windows. It's not going to be bootable. But it'll be your exact NVMe drive. And then if you pull your data off of it, you can open this up, take the drive back out, and use it in another computer, or keep it in the drive and use it as a backup device. Whatever you want to do. And he was all on board with that, and that's exactly what we did. So when it comes to data recovery, or data rescue, whatever you want to call it, these devices can be lifesavers, and they're far cheaper than paying somebody to do it for you when you can do it yourself. I was at Home Depot the other day. One of the Home Depot employees walks up to me and he says, you know, did you know, first of all, he says, hi, you know, he introduces himself. He says, can I ask you, you know, on behalf of Home Depot, can I take a survey? I said, go right ahead. He says, did you know that we offer repair for heating and air conditioning? I said, no, didn't know that. And he says, they've partnered with a local company. Have I heard of this local company? I said, yes, I've seen their and heard their ads. They advertise all the time. He goes, have you ever utilized them for any repair services? And I had this real puzzled look on my face. I said, I do all my own repairs, which is why I'm at Home Depot. So it's like, okay, he smiled, have a nice day. You can save a lot of money when you DIY, when you do it yourself. And this stuff is incredibly simple once we can get through your self-doubt. But that's what the Life 101 series channel is for. And I'll be making more videos with that very soon as we talk about the philosophies in life that get us through our state of mind and what influences our state of mind, including benchmarking software, what people say, both virtual reality on the internet and Facebook or social media, and what they say to your face, and how we choose to allow that to alter our faith in ourselves, things we believe in, Well, I believe in you, and everything I'm going to show you today, you can do this. And it's really simple stuff. And that's what this whole channel is really about. It's not an advertisement for my business. I've been in business a long time, long before there was ever a YouTube, and I was able to survive without it. This is really just about sharing what I've learned, because there was not a resource like this available to me, and I wish there was, and I hope that you guys will see some benefit from it. So 12 and a half minutes in, we can finally start with the review now that I've prefaced and set everything up with the foundation. Remember, this is the old M2 SATA, and only M2 SATA drives will work in the enclosures, and in the case of the small enclosure, it's got to be a smaller M.2 drive. It's rocket science, I know. So Silverstone said, hey, we saw that review you did, and we did not have our MS11 ready, but we do now, and can we send it to you? Yes, please. And here it is. My thanks over to Tony over at Silverstone. As always, Tony is the man. Let's take a look at the package here. I just cut the tape, but before I take it out of the box, let's take a look at what you get. Link for this is in the video notes down below. This is the MS11. Now, for those of you who want to freeze frame that and read it, you're certainly welcome to. One of the things that was eye-opening is as we get to these higher speeds, the quality of the cable becomes critical, because you can have the fast drive and the fast enclosure with the fast USB port on the computer, but then you have a cheap cable and it all goes right down the toilet, and then you'll scratch your head wondering, how did I screw it up? And for that reason, Silverstone also sent me some extra cables, but they want to emphasize here in the box the quality of their cables, because they don't see the point in selling you a high-speed device and throwing in a cheap USB cable. Think about it. How's that data getting from here to your PC? It's got to go through the cable. If it's a crappy cable, look, if I sold you filtered water, but I ran it through a sewer pipe to your house, do you want to drink it? Just saying. Think about it. These are the performance numbers they're showing potential on this enclosure. And we're about to verify that very soon here. A couple of contributions have come in. Let me give some folks some recognition. Supramula has contributed $1 twice. Thank you for that. Shane D contributed $2, and Andrew Dorset in New Zealand has contributed $2 and says, thanks for all your knowledge, Uncle Carey. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate that. So in the box, we've got our documentation. We've got a tiny little screwdriver. We've got the USB Type A to Type C adapter. A lot of motherboards, if you look on the back of your motherboard, I'll get the words out, give me a minute. On the back of the motherboard where the I/O shield is, it may be that you may only have one USB 3.1 port, and it'll be the one that fits into, that little, and the great thing is it's reversible. There's no way to plug it in upside down. They address this with the Type C connector, which, this connector on the other hand, it only goes in one way. So I don't know why you have to try 3 times before it fits, but whatever. So that's an option for you to use with the included USB cable. And then this, hold on, let me get the wire tie off. There we go. There's a bag of tiny screws to go with the tiny screwdriver. And the camera's not focusing on it because it's see-through, and anyway, kind of can see it right there. And then finally, the enclosure itself. Now, this is the first time I'm seeing this. Everything is live and genuine. All my reactions are authentic. Looks like we've got some thermal pads. Well, a lot of thermal pad. No, just 2. Well, that's exactly... No, wait a minute. 1, 2... Why do I have 3? Is it just maybe a spare? Probably says something about that in the instructions. Now, the enclosure is going to have a Type-C plug on it. So you can use a Type-C to Type-C cable. So as you noticed, or may not have noticed, the cable that they've included is Type-C, and then what we call Type-A. This is the very common USB side you're going to see the most. So if on the back of your computer you've got a small one like this, then you'd want to take this end and plug this adapter on it. And that way you know for a fact you're running in USB 3. At least 3.0, is it 3.1 on the Type-Cs? But at least you'll know you're in a high-speed USB port. You may have multiple USB ports on the back of your computer of varying generations for backwards compatibility. Motherboard manufacturers, well, it's not really for backwards compatibility. It's about what the motherboard chipset can handle. Some motherboard chipsets limit you to only having 2 USB 3.1s, and then they'll give you a couple of USB 3.0s, and then the motherboard chipset can only handle so many of those. And then you'll get some USB 2.0s. Now, these are usually indicated with color. Normally, the USB 2.0s or 1s will be black. USB 3 will be blue. 3.1 will often be red or will have the smaller connector on it. It's all backwards compatible, but anything you plug in will only run to the ability of its maximum ability. So in other words, this is an old USB flash drive. If I were to plug this into USB 3.1, it's not going to run any faster because it's limited to how fast this is. And if I were to plug this USB 3.1 into a USB 2, it'll only run as fast as USB 2, not as fast as this can run. You with me? So the slowest point of the chain is it's just like a freeway. If there's a guy on the freeway driving 20 miles an hour slower than everybody behind him, well, you can't go any faster than the car in front of you, right? It's kind of like that. So now what we have to do is we have to purchase an NVMe M.2 drive and put it in there. This is an empty enclosure. This is just like buying a hard drive enclosure where you have to put your own hard drive in. This is a DIY project. Tom Jackson says, Whatcha, Tom? Cheers. Steve Gunnick has contributed $2. What's in the box? What's in the box? Ian Costello has contributed £2. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Now, solid state drive. I have shown these drives time and time again. I love the Intel 660p series because you get capacity, you get decent performance. You're not breaking any records, but you get decent performance. It's at least 3 times to 4 times faster than SATA. And in some cases, it's cheaper. Explain that? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. And you know you can trust the name Intel. Let's face it. They're a huge manufacturer. You don't have to worry about who is this Intel? I've never heard of them. Do they have a website? Do they do computers? As opposed to, I don't know, some name that you can't pronounce that you've never heard of before, which may or may not be a legitimate in-business operation, or some guy in his garage white labeling stuff. I don't know. But in the box, we don't need directions. We don't need that. And then there's a lot of cardboard, which we don't need. Yeah. So 2 terabytes of storage, and it's all the size of a stick of gum. And as I mentioned, this looks identical to the untrained eye to the much slower SATA version of M.2. It's important, in fact, it's critical if you want it to work that you buy the compatible style of M.2 with the enclosure. If you buy a SATA enclosure, then you must buy a SATA drive to go in it. If you buy an NVMe enclosure, you must buy an NVMe drive to go in it. I don't know how else to explain that any simpler. The drive has screws, 2 screws here and 2 screws here. Chester Hughes has contributed $5, and let's see it. Everybody says Happy Canada Day. I guess it's Canada Day, eh? Happy Canada Day. Right on. Get you some poutine, some beer, and there's got to be a third one. And some back bacon, eh? Cheers to Bob and Doug McKenzie. Sharon Idles contributed £2.01. It says, have some more dosh. There we are with dosh. Dosh. That was the word. L. Have you heard of dosh? Got to check in with L. L is all up on the faff. Now, I want to just look at the directions here for a moment. You want to join me? Let's say, step 1, take apart. Step 2, insert drive. Step 3, put back together. I think I got this. Okay, so it's the putting back together part that I get stuck with sometimes, but I think we're going to be okay today. Darren Kluth just contributed $2. Thank you, Darren. Does it matter which side I take apart? It wants me to take apart this side with the hole in it. It wants me to take those 2 screws out. Let me do that right now. This is probably not a magnetized screwdriver. It's so tiny. Everything's so tiny. I gotta get glasses because everything's tiny. Can I just say, the one thing about this screwdriver is it makes me feel like I'm 40 feet tall. Give me your tiny screwdriver, human. Oh, got a screw loose. Found it. That is a tiny screw. And the other one? Why did the other screw? I didn't even untighten the other screw. So be warned about that. Now we're going to take this out. Let me see if I can get you a little close up here. So we're going to go for a little ride on the table. Here we go. Sound effects are free. No additional charge for that. Got your Dramamine? Good. Now, this is what it looks like. Remember how it came out. We don't want to put it back in upside down. It probably won't be possible. There's little grooves set in here. And I wasn't really paying attention. How did that come out? Was it the top one? So it came out of the top groove with the Silverstone side facing down. We use the top groove. Okay. Neil Garrett just contributed $4.99. He says, I unbox the same way you do. Well, obviously, you are a man of many talents and skills and unequivocal taste. Okay, this is the other side. This is the side we need to use. This is the side that's going to hold the M.2 drive in for us. Thank you, Neil, by the way, for the contribution. The snide remark was just me trying to be funny. I'll try harder. Now, in order for us to get this drive in here, there's going to be a little screw that has to come out of this side. And it's holding this piece in. And you'll see there's multiple holes because, as I mentioned, these little drives come in smaller sizes. That's how you can get smaller and smaller tablets and phones and things. Well, they're not using these in phones yet, but they probably will one day soon. Peter Vigian just contributed £5. He says, hello from the UK. I'm finally getting caught up with you again. Thank you, Peter, and welcome. Welcome from the UK. I know we have a lot of viewers watching us in the UK. So what I need to do right now is I need to remove the screw that's holding this in with my tiny, tiny screwdriver. Here we go. It's going to be a little hard for me to film and do this at the same time. I will do what I can. Come on out. It is a little difficult to work with that screwdriver. I think I'm going to use a different driver when I put it together. maybe. So take that screw out, and now that little brass piece can sit there. It's got a little indentation so it can go into any of these holes. Now that last hole is the 80 millimeter length. That's the most common, and as a result of it being more common, there's more manufacturers, and as a result of there being more manufacturers, you as a consumer have more freedom of choice and pricing. So there's our drive. Oh, probably would help if I get my hand out of the way. There's our drive, and you just want to avoid touching what we call the gold fingers on the end. There's little notches in the plastic, so you can take the drive out and get rid of the plastic. See this little moon, half moon cut out? That's what's going to line up with that little brass thing we just took out. There's a notch cut in the top, and this is what the front of the drive looks like, in case you're curious. Oh, I have lovely fingers, don't I? Well, after you're done throwing up in your mouth a little bit, right in here on the device, it's got a little socket, and it's going to match exactly what it looks like on a modern motherboard. And the socket has a notch, and the drive itself also has a notch. You must line those up, and it sort of goes in on a bit of an angle, and it'll sort of stick up like that. It's sort of springy. That's normal. And you shouldn't see the gold anymore on the other end of this drive. And I'm just going to wait for my camera to focus for a minute before I go too quickly. Now, we're going to take this brass piece, and we're going to put it back in so that it fits into the hole. And then this should, no, wait a minute. This isn't right. It's got to go this way. My bad. It goes in the bottom just the way we took it out. The brass piece, hold on. I have to think about this now. I'm confused. I got it right the first time. It's going to go in this way. Forgive me. I have to put it, here's the thing. This is what the instructions are for. But I'm going to take the brass piece and I'm going to go ahead and seat it inside of that little half moon shape there on the end of this M.2 drive. Sorry, I had a moment, but I'm okay now. Now I'm going to go ahead and just set that down into the hole that it's going to align with. And it may require just a little bit of negotiation to get it to align properly. But it should seat. It's very difficult to show you, but it should seat in that little hole. And it's not quite seating. It's like it's just a little off. Yeah, it's not the only thing. There it goes. It just inserted. And now, when you look closely, this brass piece is completely flush with the circuit board underneath. And then we're going to use the included screw to put in the back of it, and that's going to hold it down, and that keeps the M.2 drive that we've installed secured in position so it won't come loose. That would be bad. If it would come loose during a read or a write process, it could corrupt or potentially damage the drive with an electrical short. So now I'm going to try and do this where you can see it, but I don't know how I'm going to do that just yet. I'm going to take the screw that came out. Try to avoid touching any circuitry. Like I'm holding the back of the board, and it's really hard for you to see. I can appreciate that. I'm not touching it anywhere where the circuitry is on this side, touching it over here. You can wear an electrostatic discharge strap if you make you feel better. But if you have safe handling precautions, as I demonstrate in my videos, then that would be irrelevant or redundant, but that's okay. If it makes you feel better, please go ahead and use one. Getting this started without a magnetic screwdriver is a little maddening. I definitely need a different screwdriver for this because I don't have the patience for it. I'm just going to use a regular old, what do I have? This sounded to it. It's just a regular old screwdriver right here. We're going to use that. It's right there. And that should be magnetic. Let's see. Let's see if it'll stick. That's going to make my life a lot easier now. So let's try this one more time. I don't know why they made the screw so long. I think that screw could have been half the depth. Minor complaint, but I got to complain about something. It's what I do, and I'm really good at it. That's it. That's the installation process. Now we can slide the drive. What I say, it was in the top slot with the words facing down, right? Isn't that what I said? And I need to make sure that the part that has the plug on it is facing out. And just put it back the way I took it apart. Got it? And then we'll take the end piece and we'll put that back on. Now, because these screws are so tiny, I don't think my big screwdriver is going to work at all for the, no. These are slippery little devils. You've got to be very cautious. They're easy to lose. It appears that this little bag that came with it are all just spares. That's generous that they gave us so many spares. So thank you to Silverstone. Now there's one more thing I can do, which is probably a good idea before I secure this. And that would be, because I'm looking down and I'm noticing I didn't put any thermal pads on. These are not required, but they are recommended. And the way we would use the thermal pads is we would place them, I'm just looking at the documentation to make sure that Silverstone's recommending the same thing I would. You would place a thermal pad on the top and the bottom of the drive before you secure it. So I'm going to end up taking this drive back out for a moment. However, know that there are thicker thermal pads and thinner ones. It appears there's one that's twice as thick as the other two. So the thick gray, they said it's gray, but there's nothing here that's gray. The documentation says it's gray. It's not gray, it's blue. For single-sided M.2, please use 1.5 millimeter thick gray pad. For double-sided M.2, please use a 0.5 millimeter thick. Okay, so what that means is, what does that mean, double-sided or single-sided? What that means is, when you look at your drive, does it have chips on the front and the back? Let's take another look at it. So we take this right back out for a second and just pull that out. You notice on this, there's no chips on the back. It's just a blank circuit board. All the chips are up on front. That's the way most M.2 drives I've seen exist. I don't know that I've seen one with chips on the back, but they must exist. And it's saying if it's a bare back, then what you want to do is take the thicker pad, which I have here, it's pretty thick, and we're going to take the protective peeling off of it here, peel off that film, protective film, and just kind of center it here over the drive. Just like so. And then peel the protective film off the opposite side. This was a step that I have skipped. Again, it's not required, but if you got it, use it. And we're going to repeat the installation one more time. Only this time with the thermal pad in place. What happens with these devices is when under heavy load, they will get really hot and they will start to thermally protect themselves by slowing down. And so your performance may start to dwindle a bit until it cools back off. And so these thermal pads are there to help with that. They don't hurt anything. They shouldn't hurt. And it's still possible, depending on your operating environment and what you're doing with the drive, to still cause it to thermally throttle. It doesn't really let you know it's doing it. It's just your performance numbers will sort of sink a little bit until it cools back down. It usually cools down in seconds. It doesn't take typically very long. It's not like you have to stop and go away for a half an hour. It's typically if you just stop all write or read, I'll find the words. If you just unplug the drive, or you don't even have to unplug it, if you just stop reading and writing to it for a couple seconds, that should be all it needs to cool back down. But the minute you slam on it again, it'll just heat right back up. That being said, we've got the M.2 drive installed with the thermal pad now. And I'll take the other thermal pad, which we have 2 to choose from. I guess the spare one is the other one you would use if you had chips on the other side. And then you wouldn't use the thick one. So that explains why there are 3 and not 4. I was thinking there would be 4 because they would give us 2 extras. They don't give you any extras. This is really intended to sort of go on there and stay on there. And ideally, you want to cover we have the NAND chips and the controller. I think I want to cover a bit of the controller, cover as much of the controller as I can. What do they say about that? Do they say anything about where to place it? Nope. It doesn't really advise us one way or the other. There's a different color chip right here. That's the controller. And then these other black chips, these are the little storage closets. Those are the NAND chips. Those are what's holding your data. I would think this controller itself is the thing we want to keep the most cool, but what do I know? I'm not exactly sure. I think I'm just going to cover half of it, and then we'll go all the way to the end, or as far as we can go. Something's going to be exposed either way. As you can tell, the thermal pad doesn't extend the full length, and it's probably that way for a reason. And I will not question it. Again, this would work fine without it. I'm just at this point trying to find the film. There it is. Peel that off. Once the film is off, avoid touching the surface. It will affect its efficacy of performance because of the oils on your skin. Now, put this back into... I flipped this around because if I turn this piece like I did before, I'm afraid that little thermal pad's going to fall off. Doesn't even feel like that thermal pad's making contact with anything, so I'm not quite sure. What good is that? I'm not sure what good that is. It doesn't seem to be touching anything. Here's the problem. With a thermal pad on there, if it were to make contact with the top of this enclosure, it wouldn't slide in. It would just bunch itself up. I'll have to talk to Silverstone about that. Maybe they can explain it to me. And then we'll put that piece right back on there. And then this tiny screwdriver. Again, this is a little difficult for me to film for you guys because it's hard for me to see it and I'm standing in front of it. So let me see what I can do to get these screws started. I just really don't like that tiny screwdriver. I do not like it at all. It's very common for screws like that to be included in these devices, from all manufacturers, really. Not from all of them, but it's not uncommon. Let me put it to you that way. Whoever's making these little tiny screwdrivers must be making a killing. Okay, let's see if this will stick. That'll stick. Now let's put it in there. There's one. This is not good. These screws just spin, they don't want to tighten, which explains why the whole piece fell out. Why? Maybe it's in upside down from the factory and I have to turn it the other way around. Is that possible? Let's find out. Let's see if this can go in the other way. Doesn't feel right. Indeed. That ain't gonna happen. So what I'm looking at is the inside of this. I'm trying to figure out these little notches up at the top. That's where the screws bite. And as you can see, they're not enclosed. They're open on one side. So I don't know how the screw is supposed to stay based on that design. It seems wrong. Still got a little wobble to this too. I think these manufacturers really need to put more work into the disassembly and reassembly of these devices, because it really seems to separate the men from the boys here. And Silverstone's manufacturing quality has always been really good. But what you can see is this circuit board is not fitting flush into where it's supposed to go. It just won't go all the way to the back for some reason. Something is preventing it from going all the way in. And I suspect, though I could be wrong, that unless that's fully seated, then this piece cannot seat all the way down either. This piece is hitting the circuit board before it hits the enclosure, and it won't seat down. So when I go to put the screws in, the screws can't go in as deep. So for the heck of it, let's take the other side out and just see what's holding it in. Maybe there's something back here we can change. Yeah, there is a foam on the back that seems to be causing this problem. So if I put this in now, and then we put this piece in, now it's flush. Now it's fully flush. So for grins, I'm going to just keep it right there. Let's see if these screws go in now. And I'm even going to change the screws out just to make sure it's not a stripped screw or something, just to see if they will tighten down. Wow. That's even hard to turn, which is a big difference from what it was doing before. In fact, it won't even go all the way in. This is just getting more and more interesting. So with that one screw there, I want to put the back on. Did he just say the back? Yeah, he said the back. He's going to put the back? He's putting the back. That's what he said. Yeah, I can't get that on. It's not going. Not happening. Okay. If I take this foam pad and I peel it off, let's just take it off. I mean, I imagine it's there for a reason, and I think that reason is to upset me. Well done. Just put that with the rest of the goo. Okay. It's like the hole's not big enough. Well, the reason the screw was hard for me to turn before is I had this piece in upside down, because that screw is still not tightening which may mean I have a defective unit. Sorry, the video's not the greatest right now. I am struggling with my hands filled to figure out what I have to do to coerce this. So that's sort of gone in. No, it's just not going to tighten. And because it doesn't tighten, if I just push it, it just falls right out. This is not good. But this is what happens on live video. This is exactly what happens. But here's the difference. What if I was dealing with some manufacturer off eBay? This could be a, am I going to get support or not type situation. But because I'm dealing with Silverstone, I know Silverstone has my back. Now, what I would like to see is an improved way of opening and closing the enclosure that doesn't involve screws. I'd like to see this toolless. I'd like to, or at least just make it one screw. Make it clip, have it on a hinge, let me close the door, let it lock like a suitcase, and then allow me to secure it with one screw. I think it'd be fine. But I have another idea. Well, it's not really my idea. It's the brilliance of Silverstone. They sent me another one. Yeah, they sent me two. I want to see if the other one is any better, and if maybe I just got a unit that was, you know, not right. Because, hey, it can happen. It can happen to the best of manufacturers. Nobody's perfect. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. This will be a real easy test. I'm simply going to remove the top. These screws already feel better. Set that down. Slide out the circuit board. There it goes. Take this one because they're exactly the same, put it back in. Huh? How you like me now? That looks good. Now, will these tighten? That one's tight. Yes, that worked exactly like it's supposed to. I just had to open the wrong box. That's what it was. So the problem now is there's no way for me to secure this old one, because no matter what I do to it, well, I can put the back on. I think the back fit okay. Even though I've removed the foam, it's all right. I don't really think that foam makes a big difference. There's nothing fragile that's gonna break. Foam doesn't need to cushion anything. That's, I don't know. Maybe it's to prevent rattling, but there's no moving parts. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they're putting foam in there. It just seems like that's gonna degrade over time and dry out, especially in a desert climate. And it just, I don't know. I think this unit just This was a bad unit. This unit was probably made on a Friday. That's what I'm going with. Because these back screws, they tighten up just fine. It's these front ones, they just will refuse to tighten. And as you witnessed on video, it just came apart. But again, the difference isn't whether or not a company makes a bad product, you know, has a product with a defect. That always happens. The question is, how does the company help you when you need their help? Are they there for you? And I have found Silverstone to be absolutely upstanding when it comes to customer support and service, so I wouldn't worry. The only other thing I would be curious about is there a slight chance that they gave us larger screws? Is that why this bag is here? Is it possible that these are just slightly wider for just such a scenario? I don't know. But I should probably put the circuit board back in it too. Right? So we'll put that back in there. It just will not sit flush. It won't go all the way down. That is so strange. Let me turn it around the other way. Oh, that's better. They're going to have to deal with that. There's got to be a better way to know that you've got it upside down. It still doesn't quite sit flush, but it's, well, yeah, it is. It's, well, it's mostly, it's just a little smidgen off. Can I tighten it now? No, it just doesn't tighten. Just the screw just spins and spins and spins, and then it spins a little bit more. So, just want to make sure it wasn't my idiocy. Although when Tony from Silverstone sees this, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I really don't. Okay, here's my problem, Silverstone. Here's my issue. One, the instruction shouldn't tell me there's a gray thermal pad if there's not a gray thermal pad. Two, I should not be able to take this circuit board and turn it around. Which way did I have it? As you can see, there's two grooves in there. So with the Silverstone label facing up and the M.2 facing up, well, the M.2 socket, I can slide that in. If I take this out, flip it 180 degrees, with the M.2 now facing down, it still goes in. Doesn't go quite all the way, but what's up with that? So if you're designing this for average ordinary people, if you're not designing this for engineers, how is the end user supposed to remember how it came out? It should only go in one way. There should only be one slot, and these screws should go into holes. They should not go into slots, because the slots simply don't secure the screws, and they're too easily stripped out, as we've witnessed here. So I think they can improve this manufacturing by just a little tiny bit. I think it would make a big difference. You want to look down in there? You can probably see the screws on the back end. Maybe not. Need to let's get a light in there. Let's take a look in there. Is that docking bay 95? Anyway, that's a thinker. Wasn't expecting that today. Didn't have time for this today. So put it in one way, it seats all the way, but the screws won't go in. Put it in the other way, and the slot's slightly wider, but it doesn't quite. It's just not quite sitting all the way down if you put it in the wrong slot. Take it out, turn it around. Put it in that slot. And it's all the way in now. It's completely seated and flush. Silverstone's got to do a better job. They have got to change that design so that the end user can't screw it up. It should be one way or no way. Just like the M2 drive will only go in one way. An M2 SATA will not plug into an NVMe socket unless that NVMe socket is backwards compatible. And an NVMe M.2 absolutely positively will not go into an M.2 SATA There's no such thing as backwards compatible. That would be forwards compatible. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, yeah. So apart from that little moment, how was your day? Not a big deal. Hopefully they can take this information. Hopefully Silverstone could utilize this and say, guys, we got to go back to the drawing board. Not completely back, but just at least back far enough that we can figure out a different mechanism for clarifying the opening and closing of the unit, and change the way the screws go in. If you insist on using the screws, give them proper threaded holes. Don't give me half of a hole. That's all I'm saying. You can quote me on that. Don't give me half of a hole. How can it be whole, W-H-O-L-E, if it's half? That is today's brain puzzle. And while you're thinking about that, let me grab my laptop and we'll run some performance tests and we'll see what kind of numbers we can generate. How about that? So this laptop boots up really quickly, but I'm gonna just address some comments here in the chat room because I have not been paying attention because I was really into this. Put my tiny screwdriver over there. Yes, I want a whole hole. Is that really so much to ask? Thank you for that. I need a... Mopantsu has basically... I should have thought of that on my own. That was funny. Just give me a whole hole. That's really... We talk about cutting corners. How do you cut corner off a hole? I'm sorry. I don't mean to give Silverstone a hard time. I'm just a little surprised that that's what they went with on that design, because I know they're better than that. Oh, Tony's never going to send me anything to review again. That was the beginning of the end, I think. Was there a good reason to change it from the whole top opening up on the Silverstone? That's a good question. What they're referring to is if you look at the other Silverstone design, there's 4 screws on the back, and this whole back opens up. These ends are finished, and you don't have to worry about alignment. It's real easy. You know how it goes in. It only goes in one way. There's no track to slide it in. If you put it in upside down, the back won't go on. And then you just deal with that little switch. Now, there's a very good question, and perhaps one we can get an answer for when they being Silverstone, see the video. Did I miss any contributions? Let me take a quick look. 4chan for Prez has contributed $4.20. It says the drive will work without the enclosure. Well, of course it will, but that's not the way it is intended to work. It is brand new, and it should function as intended. Lourdes Evans has contributed $2. Yeah, so the point when I do my reviews is not to try and fix something. I mean, look, if you're a customer and you go to the store to buy a product, and that product does not work as advertised out of the box, you have every right to return it. You should not have to re-engineer it or adjust or accommodate it or get some duct tape. That's one thing if somebody gives you something and says, hey, I don't want this anymore. I've used it. I don't want it. It's not perfect. I've used it. And you say, fine, I'll take it because it's free. If you're paying your hard-earned money for a product, that product should be engineered well, or with as well as the price you're paying. Okay, so these Silverstone enclosures, let's see, what's the price on these? Remember that Sabrent one is my favorite of the two, but I didn't like the cable it came with. Sabrent, the enclosure and the installation of everything was fantastic, but the cable was just crap. And the Orico had a great cable, but the enclosure was difficult to open and close to install the drive. And obviously, it's not something you would do very often, but it shouldn't be painful. So the Silverstone MS11 on Amazon sells for $60. Yeah. And the Sabrent, which is heavier and has a better, it's just hefty, it's got a better thermal property to it as far as the drive is concerned. And like I said, you wouldn't want to drop it on a toe. That Sabrent, it'll break a toe. It's the same price. And it's physically larger. So Silverstone's got a smaller device. The Silverstone's not quite as wide. So $49.99 for the Sabrent, $49.99 for the Silverstone. And in theory, you know, without testing it, I should tell you, in theory, they should perform the exact same. More or less, the Orico and the Sabrent I tested earlier performed identical. The numbers on the back of the box indicate the same performance we'd already seen with the other tests because we're limited to the USB 3.1 throughput. So I'm not even sure this is worth testing at this point. Look, Silverstone's killing it with the cable. They've got it nailed. This is the best cable of any of the three drives. I like this cable with the Sabrent drive. It's a beautiful cable. Speaking of cables, Silverstone sent me a couple of their CPU 06 is what they're called. CPU, it's not a CPU, it's not a central processing unit. I don't know why they call it CPU. Again, I would reconsider the naming conventions that Silverstone is using. This can be very confusing to a common end user that doesn't know there's two different kinds of CPUs. One's a central processing unit. What's this one? Cable. Was it? I guess the C is cable. Maybe the P is protection. I don't know. But this is 1,000 millimeter, the CPU 06. It's Type C to Type C. USB 3.1 Gen 2 with the eMarker chip. Means it'll support up to, let's see, it's Type C reversible, 10 gigs a second. Reversible USB Type C male-to-male connection, SuperSpeed USB up to 10 gigs per second. Quality 26, the wire gauge, 26 AWG cable supports up to 60 watts, 3 amps for high performance charging. Cable sleeved with nylon braiding, aluminum connector housings. Boy, they just gotta get rid of that CPU name. That's terrible. I don't know why they did that. I mean, I get the SST part. That's Silverstone. All right, I get that, but I don't know where CPU goes with USB. I don't mind if they don't want to use USB. They could use the U for USB, but they need to rearrange those letters so it doesn't match another industry term. And they sent me the same cable in a different color. So that's another 1,000 millimeter. It looks like a gold color. So they have it available in gold, silver, and charcoal. And then, of course, if you don't need a cable that's 1,000 millimeters, they also have them at 500 millimeters. And again, gold, silver, charcoal, everything's still the same. eMarker chip is installed. eMarker chip. I'll be honest, I never heard that term before. But apparently, I can tell you because I have Google, and I'm going to do exactly what you're doing. Okay. For USB-C, you may be aware that USB-C can carry up to 10 gigabits per second on USB 3.1 Gen 2. But did you know very few USB-C cables on the market will actually do that? There are 3 classes of USB-C cables, just looking at data rate, before getting into anything else. The cheapest USB-C cables only actually carry USB 2.0 worth of data. And the reason is that USB-C connectors have a dedicated set of pins for USB 2.0, typically separate from the pins that carry USB 3.1, and therefore cables can be made thinner and more flexible and at a lower cost if they only have the necessary wires to connect those few USB 2.0 pins. These cables do not support DisplayPort alt mode, so don't expect to use them for displays. The market for this cable type are devices that don't require high-speed data or might require no data at all, such as cables intended solely for charging things. Additionally, not having to support higher data rates or DisplayPort allows the cables to be longer. Note that all USB-C cables are required to have the wiring for USB 2.0 pins, but some cables only have the 2.0 pins, plus power, which is required. Next up, there are cables that can carry up to 3.1 Gen 1, which is 5 gigabits per second, which also means they support DisplayPort alt mode. All else being equal, these cables will be thicker, less flexible due to the extra wires, and more expensive than the cables that only support USB 2. They are currently limited to 2 meters or 6 feet in length, and of course there are USB cables that can carry USB 3.1 Gen 2, which is 10 gigabits per second, but those are currently limited to just 3 feet or 1 meter in length, at least until cable technology improves to support those higher data rates across longer distances. Also note that USB-C cables capable of carrying either generation of USB 3.1 are required to have an eMarker chip embedded in them that advertises this capability to the devices that it will be connecting. All right, and I'm reading that from Dell's website, and it's called Demystifying USB-C Cables, One Connector Vastly Different. And I'm not going to read the whole article. It goes on for about 3 pages, but that's the gist of it. And now I've learned something new. I did not know that, but I don't see many USB 3.1 devices on the market. And even these flash drives that I have here, like this one that say they're USB 3.1, I just plug it in and use it, you know, and I'm happy with the numbers, which on that device is somewhere in the mid 400s on the reads on a flash drive. I'm really happy with that. I've been using flash drives for many, many years and accustomed to double-digit performance numbers. So when I see triple-digit performance numbers, you know, reaching up halfway to 1,000 or nearing it, it tickles me. I have nothing to complain about. My past experience, what I've come from, makes me appreciate what that device is capable of. I don't go, am I getting all the performance out of it that I can? And I like that it's universal in the sense that I can plug it into any computer in any USB port, regardless of speed, and be able to access the tools and utilities I need to do the work I need to do for my customers. So my perspective may be a little different than yours. And I've talked for so long, my laptop is turned off again. So let me power it back up. And what have I missed in the chat? John Brady's contributed $5. Great live stream, Carey. Very informative. Thank you, John. I've not shipped your computer out to you yet, but it should be soon. I'll email you. I've got your information. Carey, when will it be safe to use SSDs for long-term storage? I really don't know what that means, long-term storage. I'm not aware of anything that works as long-term storage. In the existence of mankind, everything vanishes. Everything breaks back down. A book, carve into a rock, it just erodes away until it's back to a smooth rock. I don't know what you're looking for. As far as I'm concerned, if you put data on a drive, any drive, and you put that drive on a shelf for more than 2 or 3 years without plugging it in, then that's not data you need. If you want, you can print out your data and store that the old school way in a filing cabinet. But even that will yellow and fade over time. There is no such thing as long-term storage in the sense of 1,000 years. It just isn't going to be there. But I wouldn't count on it being there. If the drive has power, a solid-state drive, on occasion, it'll be fine. But even a magnetic hard drive, the magnetism fades over time. It just fades out. So I can't answer that question because it's a weird, to me, it's a weird question. It's like asking, let me think, what's that like asking me? How can I wash my car once and never have to wash it again? Or how can I prevent my vehicle from ever, I want to keep my car like new forever. How do I do that? Well, don't drive it. Take it out of the atmosphere. I don't know. It's still going, all the parts are going to get old and dry. All the rubber, the things are meant to be used. And if you don't use them, they're going to stop working. And that includes with the human body. It's not just things. Try not using your left leg for about 2 hours. Just put it up on a table for about, let's just call it 45 minutes. Keep your legs straight, raise it up above your head for about 45 minutes. And then try to walk on that left leg and not use your right leg, and tell me how that works out. Now imagine doing that over the course of months or years. Your leg will atrophy. The muscles in your leg will atrophy, and it will become unusable until you build the strength back up in it again. The universe is a pretty simple place, folks. It's a pretty simple place. And I would just question the importance of data that you never look at for that period of time. It's just not a problem I can answer. I'm sorry. LRCX has contributed $20. Thank you for that contribution. He says, you've helped me a lot over the last 2 years. It's time to pay it back, and thank you for what you've done for all of us. And that's from Larry. Thank you, Larry. Thanks for supporting the community and the channel. Wilkins Rojas has contributed $2 and says, great as always. Thank you, Wilkins. And what else do we have in here? It looks like I missed a few others. 4chan for Prez contributed $5. He says it's called CPU on the cable because it has a small CPU, because it has a small in-cable power regulator. Would that be PR? CPR? I don't know. Went over my head. John Brady says, great live stream, Carey, very informative. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. I just want a whole hole. That's all I'm saying. I don't want half a hole. I want a whole hole. That's funny. Silverstone gave me half a hole. All right. Do I have, what I'm looking for, do I have crystal disc mark on here? Crystal disc mark. I need to grab it. Crystal disc mark. Where are you, crystal disc mark? Give me just a minute, guys. This was not... So I've been running late all day today, and I apologize. I dragged the wrong file out. Utilities, freeware, crystal disk mark portable. That's what I want. Let's bring that over there. Thank you. Here we go. And we'll just set this, I don't know, maybe right about there will be good. And the reason I'm using this laptop is it's got the built-in USB 3.1, I think it's Gen 2, Thunderbolt 3 interface. It's the, and I think the streaming computer may have USB 3.1. I'm not sure. It's got to have it. But regardless of that, I'm gonna do this here because I can show you this. And what I need to do is take the cable and we'll plug it in here, and then we'll come over here. Let's get this out of the way. Just got that one out of the way. And we'll plug this in right here. Again, it can go in upside down. There's no right side up or upside down. Small blue light. Now, this is a brand new M.2 drive. Any brand new drive has no partition or format. We have to do that in order to use it. If you're taking a drive out of an existing system or a drive that's been used before, then potentially that's already been done for you. But the very first time you use a drive, whether it's a hard drive, a solid state drive, M.2, they don't know if you're using it for Linux or Mac or what. So it's just an empty drive. And then we'll just type in disk management, disk manage. There, it says create and format hard disk partitions. And it should just auto-sense it, which it does. And it's asking if we want to create a partition. I keep wanting to use that mouse. And I'm going to click OK. And then down here, it shows an unallocated drive. So I'm going to right-click on that and choose New Simple Volume. That's the first option. It's hard for me to show that to you. New Simple Volume is what I'm selecting. And then all you have to do is click Next, and click Next, and click Next, and click Next, and click Finish. You don't have to. If you want to name it, you can name it. Always do the quick format. It's already done. With that done, let's bring up Crystal Disk Mark, and let's run the performance numbers. Make sure on Crystal Disk Mark we're selecting our external drive, which in this case is drive D. And then we'll run all tests, and we'll see what kind of numbers this brings up. If I can get the camera on it. You should see the blue light on the drive blinking rapidly. And then I can get my hand out of the shot, see what kind of numbers we're going to pull here. AV3NX says there's no such thing as half of a whole. Well, if you take a whole wheel of cheese and you cut it in half, is that now a whole half of the whole wheel of cheese? Or is it a half of the whole wheel of cheese? I would describe it as half. There would be another equal half, right? There would be two halves to a whole. So if you only had one half, you'd say one half of what? Say one half of whole. Does that work? Are you buying that? Yeah, I probably reached a little too far with that one. My wife wants to keep all pictures and videos of the kids. Well, the only way you do that is by making multiple copies and placing those copies in multiple places. So you can use services like Carbonite, Mozy for backing up to the cloud, or even Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive. There's endless possibilities putting that up into the cloud. Then, of course, there's flash drives and hard drives and solid state drives. But if you're not looking at those pictures for years at a time, then I would just suggest you print those pictures out, take them to a service or do it yourself, put them in a photo album, and do it just like your parents did it and their parents maybe before them. And that would be a good backup so that if something does happen to the data, you still have the photos, which will fade over time, but so will your data. If you don't use it. If you don't use it, you'll lose it, as Robert Spidell said in the chat. Cave drawings last forever. No, they don't. Just the few that we found. Imagine how many we never found because they faded away. Depends where they drew them. If they drew them inside of a cave, they're less likely to be hit by the elements. But even then, no guarantees. You guys are oversimplifying. What else have I missed in here? So those numbers are consistent with what this laptop has been delivering. I have no doubt that if I plug the unit into a desktop USB 3.1, that it'll perform 1,000. I think it's a limitation here, which I haven't had time to look into, but that's on par with what the other units did. If you go back and look at the testing done with this laptop on the Sabrent and Orico NVMe USB enclosures, they were very similar numbers here. And these are nothing to sneeze at. That's nearly twice as fast as my USB flash drive I was just boasting about. This thing here, that's nearly twice as fast. And this capacity is, let's see, I can't remember. This capacity is 256 gigs. This is 2,000 gigs. This was $100. That's like $130, $140 complete the way you see it. That's with the drive and the enclosure. So for a few more dollars than this, I have nearly 10 times the storage at nearly twice the speed. So look, it's not bad. And like I said, those numbers are low, and I'm convinced there's something in the laptop that's preventing it from hitting its peak. There's some limitation somewhere. There is a Thunderbolt driver that wants to install and it keeps failing, and I don't really use Thunderbolt, and when I do use it, it's for streaming, and it seems to be okay, it's working, and I don't want to break it. I'll play with it later. But those numbers are very acceptable. I'm totally fine with it. What we're dealing with here now is a limitation of basically of the technology. It doesn't really matter who makes the enclosure, it doesn't really matter who makes the drive you select. It's all about capacity. You're going to see the same performance numbers regardless if you can meet that USB 3.1 Gen 2 requirement, which only the latest motherboards and laptops support. So then the question becomes, why would you pick one manufacturer over another? Price, the ease of getting it in and out, getting the drive installed, and the support if you need it, warranty, length of warranty, quality of the cable. Silverstone traditionally hits these marks time after time after time. And every once in a while, I get a product where I'm like, oh, so close. And I feel like we're there. We're just close. But all fairness, this is a brand new product. Now, if you think every time a company goes up to the plate that they hit a home run, I think you have unrealistic expectations. I hope Silverstone addresses my concerns with a revision and will mail me an updated version that addresses it so that I can follow up this review with another. I would very much like to do that. And while we're talking about some products, I happen to find something, a deal, that I want to share with you. You might find it interesting or useful or whatever. Yeah, that'll be fine. This is the Sony, I don't know, what is it? It's a Bluetooth speaker, which I just had on the floor, and it picked up a little dog hair. The Sony Bluetooth speaker, I have a little story to tell about this. I'm going to set that right there for a minute. I have to tell you the name of it. Can never remember the name of that speaker, and it doesn't seem to be written anywhere on the speaker. Bear with me for a minute. I gotta look in my email. Just take me a second. Sony XB32. The SRS XB32 is the name of it. Now, many years ago, when I was doing a radio program, I had a guest come on the show, and they had this amazing little Bluetooth speaker that I've loved so much. I still have it to this day. I think it's got amazing sound, good quality. It's got a hefty weight, but it vibrates itself across the table, and if you don't watch it, it'll fall right onto the floor. It's solid. But this is just a little bit bigger. And these sell for about $118 on Amazon, and I found it for $75 refurbished on Newegg. 75 bucks. It's waterproof. And it's got this cool lighting. When I turn it on, hit the power button, this whole thing lights up, and it will start blinking to whatever music you're playing, and you can turn that off. And it's got a little rubberized cover back here, which I guess has to be closed for it to be waterproof. And one of the buttons is to turn the lights off if they annoy you. And another one is to add more speakers so that you could, in theory, my hands are dusty and I'm getting it all over this. In theory, you can place these all throughout your house, and whatever you're playing off your cell phone or whatever you've connected to one of the speakers, then plays across all the speakers, so you can walk from room to room to room and always have your music in the room with you. It's running off batteries, obviously. It's got these really cool color patterns, and I would like to demonstrate it to you without having to violate any copyright issues, which is my concern with YouTube anytime I play any audio. But you can pair this. It's got two blinking lights on each side that kind of go to whatever you're playing. They go to the beat. You've got volume control up on the top. And I think at $118, it's a little pricey. But for the $75 for a refurbished unit, and I don't know how many they've got available over there at who's ever selling them on Newegg, but I think it's a pretty good deal. It's got a nice full sound, and I feel like 75 bucks is a deal. And if you need to have music out by the pool, you're having friends over, you want to hang out in the backyard, summertime, barbecue, this is it. I'm telling you, this is a great little speaker. And you know the Sony name and what goes behind their products. So I just wanted to throw that in real quick. It's just, oh, it just said Bluetooth pairing because I held the power button in and it started blinking real quick. Couldn't figure that out the other day. So there, I've just turned it off. So anyway, that is a neat little speaker. I'll put a link to it in the video notes. The Sony, SB32, refurbished at Newegg, 75 bucks. You don't really get much. You get this and you get a little documentation. Super easy to pair to the cell phone or your laptop, because laptop speakers suck, let's face it. Quite honestly, I could just run a USB cable right out of it into the laptop. I don't need to have it running off batteries and Bluetooth for laptop speakers, but you can if you want to, and I just wanted to let you guys know about it because I stumbled into it and I thought it was a good deal. So now I'm sure if I want to buy another one, I won't be able to because you guys will sell them out. You guys always do. But hey, it's a good deal. I don't have an affiliate link for Newegg, and Newegg just opened all their shipping to, I think, 80 other countries now. So where Newegg was not available before, you're watching me from outside of the US and you're like, I can't order from Newegg. You might be able to order from them now if you're one of the 80 countries they just expanded in shipping into. So just FYI, I don't work for Newegg. I have no affiliate link for Newegg. I'm just offering the information. If it'll save you some money and give you some convenience, there you go. I work on tips. Oh, look at here. Jeffrey Oldham says the XB32 is $78 at Walmart brand new. Well, maybe I didn't get as good of a deal as I thought. I say for 78 bucks, it's worth 78 bucks, I think. I see some admins doing good work here in the chat room. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate your diligence. Winston Angluz contributed 5 Canadian dollars. He says, Happy Canada Day. It's July 1st. Happy Canada Day, Winston. Troll McTrollington says, free advertising. Well, look, let me ask you a question. You go to the store, or you're online. Let's just say you're online, and there's something that you see a deal. Do you tell your friends about it, or do you keep it to yourself? And if you tell your, hold on. All right, where was I? Apologize for that delay. Where were we? Let's see what's going on in the chat room. Let's see. Carey, please tell and clear my doubts on SSD hard drive setup in laptops India. It's the same. There's no difference. The setup of a hard drive or a solid state drive is exactly the same. Was I abducted by aliens? Well, that term has a different meaning in Arizona. No. What else? Troll McTrollington loves the puffy doggo. They must be talking about Lyle. Carey, we were worried about you. Worried about me answering the door? How many times have I done that on video? I think I'm caught up. All right, so we've talked about the NVMe enclosure. We've talked about, oh my God, again, hold on. Every 4th of July, so in Arizona we have an issue out here every 4th of July that involves people coming out to the open field and lighting off fireworks and things like that. And so there's people out there right now doing something they shouldn't be doing, and that's upsetting the dogs. So in just a minute, hopefully, I will have some quiet. All right. So if you have any questions, I'm going to try and work through this. If you have any questions, now would be the time, and I'll do my best to provide you answers to the technical questions that you have. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. I think I'm done with interruptions. So again, any questions you have, this will be the time. This will be the time to ask. And then while we're waiting, I guess I can go ahead and disconnect this USB drive and shut this down. And again, I want to thank Tony over at Silverstone for sending me the unit for testing. And even though I'm a little disappointed overall, considering the price, I do hope they take my comments to heart and address it in a revision. And I hope to do a follow-up video. If they do that, we will definitely follow up and see how it gets updated. It is a first-generation product for Silverstone, and I don't expect it to be perfect first time out of the gate. It's normal. It's a normal process of evolving the product. And then, of course, the Sony SB32, which I'm told is at Walmart for $78. If it's at Walmart for $78, I would buy it new rather than refurbished for the same price. Why would you buy the refurbished one? It's a great little speaker, love it. And then a reminder on the quality USB 3.1 cables, because your USB 3.1 is only going to perform as well as the cables allow it. And it's too hard to tell. I would not go bargain shopping if you're performance minded. I wouldn't try finding the cheapest thing if you want the best thing. You can find the cheapest in comparison, of the best. But I wouldn't race to the bottom. I think it's just going to lead to disappointment. L Pope says, hey, Carey, did I do it right when I sent you $10? Yes, L, I received your contribution. Thank you so much for sending it. Bicycle Lady wants to know if it's time for the doggies to have a cookie. No, I gave them their cookie earlier. It's too close to dinner time now. Not like I'm going to spoil their appetite. Carey, perhaps my terminology wasn't right. Long-term data retention. I'm simply not going to discuss long-term data retention because whatever you think is long-term and what I think is long-term are not identical. Like long-term for me might be a year. Anything beyond a year, I don't really have any interest in it. If I have data that I haven't looked at in over a year, it's not data I'm going to miss if it's gone. It's just that simple. I'm not saying there aren't solutions that fit whatever it is you're looking for. I'm saying I'm not the guy to ask. I am not a data archival specialist, nor do I have any interest in it. I make sure I back up my needed data that I require. Some of the data I've got, I have had, I think going back to the late 1990s, old resumes when I was applying for jobs in the 90s, I still have those Word documents. I still have them. And they just get re-backed up onto whatever media that I have at the time. Maybe it was floppy disks, and then it became CDs, and then it was DVDs, and then flash drives. And now I use a lot of external 2.5-inch laptop hard drives, and solid state drives now are becoming cheap enough to start using those for backup storage as well. The idea behind solid state drives is, of course, there's no wear and tear, but nothing in the world lasts forever. You must have multiple copies, and that's all there is to it. Multiple copies on multiple devices in multiple places. The more important the data is to you, the more devices you need to place it on, and the more places you need to place it in. Get it out of the building. Buildings can be susceptible to robberies, thefts, well, that's the same thing. Fires, floods, acts of nature, all kinds of things can happen in a building that is not expected when it does. So the idea is that you have it in another building on another device that's unrelated. If the data is important, that's how you do it. And at the very least, put it up to a cloud service and leave it at that. Like I say, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, there's countless possibilities there as well. Even Acronis offers online storage with your Acronis TrueImage product for 1 year. The more you have and the longer you want to keep it, the more it's going to cost you. So you have to decide your, if you say you've got nice furniture and you put it in a storage set, and it's an unconditioned, unair-conditioned storage facility, and you're in Phoenix, and that storage facility can hit 140 degrees inside of that shed, how do you think the items in that storage shed are going to age in that condition of unair-conditioned environment and extreme heat? And when you take the monthly cost of that storage unit over the number of months the items are going to be in there, and then weigh that against the cost of a new piece of furniture or pieces of furniture, when you think you're going to want them, you might find that it's more financially sound to simply get rid of what you've got and buy new and have something fresh and clean and new and warranted and nobody's ever used it before and it's all yours and it smells new and it looks new and it's not scratched and it's not weathered and it's cheaper. But it depends. If it's a storage facility for a few weeks or a couple of months, it's probably fine. If it's going to be for years and years and years, or you just don't know, unless it's priceless things, And in that case, you probably want an air-conditioned storage unit, which means the price goes up significantly. And then you've got to weigh that against what it's worth to you to have it. These are things that an individual has to decide. It's not something I can really assist you with. So other questions? How long do you think the cloud is going to last? It's not going anywhere. It would be like somebody in 1925 going, this radio fad, when do you think that's going to be over? Or this TV fad, when do you think, how long do you think people are going to be distracted by television? It's not going anywhere. It's here. It'll be here for your lifetime unless an act of nature or significant war destroys it. And even then, it'll still exist, but you may not. It'll exist longer than you do. Let's just put it to you that way. And for as much as that matters, that's all that matters. Macaroni345 says, I have had that USB to M.2 NVMe device for almost 2 years now. It's very helpful. Okay. I'm not sure which one. Silverstone just came out with theirs. But, yeah. I'm just looking through the comments to see if there's any other questions, technical questions that I can answer for you guys. Solo's summarizing what I said nicely, when items are worth less than the cost of storing them. Thank you for putting it succinctly. Michael's Tech Tip says, check PayPal. I can't check that while I'm live, but I will respond to all the contributions and say thank you as time permits. I try to get to it within 24 to 48 hours, and I appreciate all the contributions to the channel. Someone's asking questions about Windows XP. I don't answer questions about Windows XP. It was obsolete and closed out many, many years ago, and anybody who's using it needs to get off of it. It's all there is to it. If you're not off of it, if you weren't off of it 3 or 4 years ago, there's really nothing I can do to help you. I don't want to condone it. I don't want to assist you, and I don't want to be any part of it. It is far too dangerous for me to associate with anybody who's using Windows XP, because you're just asking me to help you with how much poison you should take, and I'm not being a part of that. That's on you. I do my best to help people, but I have to tell you that sometimes people, they want to do something that's ill-advised. The fact that you have a Windows XP computer in this day and age, and there's anything on it that you want, you missed that boat a long, long time ago. That boat sailed, it is well gone. So I would love, if you have a Windows 7 question, Windows 8, Windows 10, that's what I'm here for. Answering questions about anything before that, I'm sorry, that ship sailed a long time ago, and it sort of makes it all about you. There's no benefit to anybody else watching this video, because there's no point in it. There's no support in it for any piece of software. There's just no support in it. It's just, you can unplug it off the internet, use it as a standalone computer, and it is what it is. Ronaldo says, Carey, everything I order from Amazon, I use your link, bro. Thank you, Ronaldo. I appreciate that. Hello to Bob Wilson and Malcolm Maxwell. Hey, guys. Neil Rutherford. Are you saying it's worth buying refurbished items? Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Most items, if there's a significant savings, are usually tested much more thoroughly when they're refurbished. Some items are very difficult to test, like a smartphone. Smartphones have so many features that they can pass a refurbishing test and still have problems and significantly reduced battery life depending on how old the unit was before it was refurbished and how it was refurbished and how it was tested. But simple things like speakers and stuff like that, every laptop I've purchased, I think, has been refurbished. Make sure you get a good warranty if you're spending quite a bit of money, and read reviews and let that be your guide. But I think there's great bargains to be had in refurbished items. All those machines you see me give away, those are all off-lease computers on their second life to homes to disabled veterans. Those are refurbished. And we know they work. We know they've been working for at least 3 years. So why wouldn't they work another 3 or 5 or 8 years? Why wouldn't they? The thing about a refurbished item is at least it's got a history to it. A brand new item, you just don't know. All you know is it went through the manufacturing process and got rubber stamped through the documented standard procedural QC that goes through every single item, which is not perfect. I'd rather have a tested item, personally. And if I can save money to have somebody do the additional testing, it's a win-win. There are a few exceptions to that, of course, but overall. Hello to Madi and Rich Robbins. Richard Quick. Catherine Anna Hauserman joins us. So Catherine puts together parts lists for people. If you're looking for a parts list to be put together, sometimes people are like, yeah, you show how easy it is to build a computer, but how do I know which parts go together? Well, that's what Catherine will do for you, just for a thank you. You can reach out to her here in the chat room. She can talk to you and advise you as to what it is you want to get done with that computer, what you want it to look like, how much is your budget, what do you expect it to do? And she can assist you with her recommendation of parts. She just likes doing it, but I can't imagine why anybody does that for fun, but she does, and she's really good at it. So just keep that in mind, and always good to see Catherine in the chat. Wilbur Jones says he bought a refurbished Lenovo laptop and he's quite happy with it and he uses it for studying. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Not only that, Lenovo makes good laptops. They're good business machines, which means they endure a lot of travel and, they get beaten around a bit. At least they did when I was working at Intel and APS and I had to service these things. They took quite a beating. Lenovo was the brand that, well, it was IBM ThinkPad back then. And they're very well respected in the business environment. Carey, what could cause a computer to shut down other than overheating? Your imagination is the only limitation. You just simply diagnose one part at a time until you find the part that's causing it. Literally anything can cause that, from a bad capacitor on a motherboard or a video card to a power supply, a bad cable or wire, bad software, corruption, power in the house, power delivery to the system itself, a short, or perhaps when it was put together, or when it was moved, something isn't seated fully or correctly, RAM not seated correctly or bad, CPU not seated correctly or bad, whatever the part is inside of your computer, that is potentially what's causing it. And you just isolate them by disconnecting each part one by one until you've isolated down to the motherboard, RAM, and CPU. Then you check the RAM by removing all the RAM except for one stick. with a different power supply. If the computer continues to reboot, you have either a bad motherboard or a CPU, in which case it's probably time to change both. So it's a pretty simple diagnostic process. It takes a little time, but it's pretty basic stuff. Is Lenovo owned by IBM? No, Lenovo bought out the ThinkPad brand from IBM. IBM sold it, just as Sears sold off Maytag and Craftsman. IBM sold off Lenovo, just cashed out. And so at first, Lenovo was carrying the ThinkPad name on the laptops for a couple years, and then they slowly faded it out and just left it as Lenovo. A very large Chinese-owned corporation, and pretty well respected, very well respected, I should say. Not like, say, Huawei or others that are under scrutiny at this time. What is a good brand for USB sticks? I don't really think you can go wrong with any brand, but if you want high performance, then you're not going to get a cheap price. But I like the SanDisk Extreme Pro, and better than that is just building your own USB stick by using a device like I just showed today. Why not just build your own? It'll be faster, larger capacity. You can upgrade it later if you want to. It's a little larger, but it's a whole lot faster and a whole lot bigger for a lot less money. Even just going to M2 SATA using the regular SATA-based Silverstone enclosures like I was showing off earlier. These bad boys, yeah, it's a little larger, but your possibilities of performance and capacity are far greater than any USB flash drive. But if you want to stick with the small compact size of the USB flash drive, the SanDisk Extreme Pro is my preference. But there are others. It's not the only thing on the market, but that's what I like. And thank you guys for the questions. I will just wait a couple more minutes to see if anybody else has any other questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Gary Whitaker says hello. Hey, Gary, welcome in. And Sharon Idle, of course, Tina McLaughlin, and Bob Wilson, Thomas Carter, and Solo, Richard Prescott, Ronaldo Torres. Thank you guys for joining me today. Michael's Tech Tip says, I got a Dell 7010 and it's working great. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a good machine. These off-lease computers were used in a business environment at least 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day minimum for 3 years in general. And they were maintained by an IT support staff. They were not, again, with few exceptions, they were not used like a residential customer might use a computer like an appliance. They were taken care of. And once that lease ran up, those computers have very little value. And so buying an off-lease computer like a Dell 7010, assuming you bought one off-lease, I think is a great deal. If you're looking for a rocket ship and a high-end gaming system, you're just not going to find it with business machines. You could sort of make it happen. By the time you're done spending the money, you might as well have just built something or bought somebody else's used computer off Craigslist or something. And even then, they often charge, in my opinion, way too much money. I see computers for sale on Facebook Marketplace that are about $200, and they want $600 for them or more. And I'm just thinking, I feel bad for whoever buys that. Will the weight of the drive hurt the USB socket on the motherboard? It's not heavy, no. And in the case of, if you're concerned, you can also just buy an extension cable and just plug the cable and let it hang off the cable. But no, it's not going to hurt it. What would hurt it is if, while it's plugged in, you've got this big thing sticking out, you hit it with your leg or your hand, you didn't see it, and you'll break it right off. So just invest in a small USB cable if you're prone to that or worried of that happening, and then connect it via the USB cable. Just plug one cable into the computer and then your flash device into the other end of the cable, Make sure it's a good quality cable if performance matters to you. And then you don't have to worry about any weight hanging off the back. Or maybe you want to plug it into the back of the computer, but the computer's up against a wall and there's not enough space. It's going to solve that problem too. Can I still buy DDR3 RAM? Absolutely. It's very easy to find DDR3. It's plenty of it available wherever. Anybody who sells RAM like Newegg and Amazon has tons of it available, and it's cheap. Carey, do you view the older AMD bulldozer steamroller architecture as a failure, as many people do? All that matters is that a computer meets your needs. It doesn't matter to me what somebody else's needs are. If your computer meets your needs, what anybody else thinks about it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. If you have a computer that's secure, in other words, running Windows 7 or Linux or some modern updated operating system that keeps you secure online, I don't care what the computer is. I don't care if it's a Raspberry Pi. I don't care. It's not for me to say. If you go to a restaurant and you order the most disgusting thing on the menu and you think it's the best thing on the menu, who's right and who's wrong? It really doesn't matter. When I was, so at college, we had at the dorm, there would be pizza. What a shock. And the pizza could sit there for 3 days, unrefrigerated, in the box. I wasn't eating it, but other people did, and they never got sick. But I wasn't eating it. So there is no real sense of success or failure outside of sales numbers. That's how that's all judged. If the critics tell me this movie came out and it's horrible, and I go see the movie and I love it, who's right and who's wrong? I don't think Rocky Horror Picture Show did well in the reviews, and yet look at how it's performed. And look at how it remains such a loved movie. It's a cult, what we call a cult classic. I think success or failure in terms of CPUs and video cards is really just weighed upon how much money did it make, much like movies. And ultimately, if you bought something that didn't perform well and they took it off the market, but you're happy with it, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Have you read The Art of Deception? Yeah, that's by, what's his name? Kevin Mitnick did that book, right? I met Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick was, there's sort of a little fight about that. He calls himself a hacker. He's really a social engineer. He just gets people to tell them their passwords. He gets people to do things, regardless of their security. And in that way, he's a genius. He's also very open with how he does things. It was a real pleasure to meet Kevin, and he's a super down-to-earth guy. And I would love to sit down and pick his brain. I believe I've interviewed him on at least 2 or 3 occasions in the past, but it's been a long, long time. He's not in the news like he used to be. And was somebody I really admired for the guts it takes, because what Kevin did was real. You know, what Kevin did, he didn't just like hide behind an email address or be a coward. He would actually show up and pretend to be somebody. There's a certain amount of respect I have for somebody who steps away from the keyboard and has the confidence and the skill necessary to look somebody directly in the eye and convince them to give up their passwords or security codes. He's good at it. Like I was ready to hand him my driver's license, and that's just from shaking his hand and saying hello. That's how good he is. He is good. Like I would buy any car he was selling. He's that good. So anybody can sit behind a keyboard and try and taunt people or you know, flex their flimsy little virtual muscle, which exists somewhere. I guess you could flex it like this and you go, look at that. I just laugh. I think it's hilarious. But when it, to me, so I'm old school, I'm part of that original, what the word hacker was never a bad word. The word hacker initially was a word that meant somebody who was curious. That's all. Just what else can I do? Is it possible to do this? Is it possible to break in? Can you break in? I don't want anything that's in there. I just want to see if I can get in. That's what a hacker is by definition. And the media has sort of changed that to cracker. They have manipulated the terms. The media has done this because they don't understand the technology. And now we have a whole generation who has effectively shifted the definition of the word of hacker to cracker. And it's frustrating to me because I have a deep respect for real, true hackers. And real, true hackers aren't copycats. They're not people who Google things. Real, true hackers who deserve respect are people who have the ingenuity and the education and the intelligence to go, what would happen if I twisted this around and did it this way? What if I tried to approach it from this angle? What if I thought outside of the box? But what we're seeing today are just copycats. There's people that Google stuff and then they think, that they're smarter now or that they're elite. Are we still using that word? Because they know how to use Google. They're script kiddies. They're children, or at least they have the minds of children. I don't know how old they are. And there's a lot of them, and I don't respect them. They're mindless. They're not creative. They're wimpy and weak. But you show me somebody like Kevin Mitnick, somebody who's bold and creative and intelligent, convincing and confident, and actually has results. I can see the results. I want to say, teach me, master. Now, I hope he's the author of that book. Otherwise, if I got the author wrong, then that was all off topic. John Paul Bacon says, my computer was based on the AM3 Plus FX series CPU for over 6 years. The FX 9590 CPU served me very well for that time. That is, if the Gigabyte 990 FX gaming motherboard hadn't failed, I'd still might be using it. Okay, fair enough. Solo says that is what Edward Snowden did. I like Edward Snowden. I do like him. And I think he did the country a great service. I think he's one of the biggest patriots in my lifetime I've ever seen to sacrifice himself on behalf of his country. That's incredible. And the people he embarrassed, the people in power, they want revenge and they want it bad. They want it bad. Okay, I think I've addressed all the questions. Have I missed anything? Someone saw something about asking me the difference in the Cat 5 and Cat 6, Cat 7 cables. For the most part, just buy the most expensive cable that you can afford so that you future-proof, although we don't have really, most of us don't have any need for Cat 7. Or even Cat 5e is probably all you really need. It wouldn't hurt you, except financially, to get the latest, whatever the latest is. I know there's at least Cat 7. Is Cat E even out? I can't remember. But I will buy Cat 7 cables all day, not because I need them, but because I don't want to have to buy them again for a long time. So if you're going to do like internal wiring in your home or where you live, you're going to put wires in the walls, get nice, good quality cables, do it once and future-proof it as long as you can. Nothing's permanent, nothing's forever, but I would try and do it right the first time and be done with it for a long time. Harry Baldwin is saying hello. Patrick Rousseau, Matt Foster. Hello, guys. PDG says there are different types of hackers, black hat, white hat, and gray hat. You know, one of my favorite events to go to is the DEF CON convention in Las Vegas. It's every year around August, July or August. And it's basically a black hat conference, except, you know, even then I don't really know that that's accurate, but they'll show everything from lock picking, Wi-Fi snooping. You want to see some smart people. You want to, like, if you think you know a lot, you need to go to DEF CON and you will be humbled quickly. And these people are kind enough to share their knowledge, typically in an anonymous environment. So they're there in the room with you, but not with a real name. When you pay for your badge at DEF CON, you're not providing any personal information and you're not paying any other way than cash. That's it. Even the badge itself every year changes to like a circuit board with a puzzle. And if you figure that out during the convention, if you're one of the first people to solve that puzzle, there's a prize for those clever enough to hack the badge. So every year the badge is different, and everything about this convention is it is appealing to a certain level of interest of technology that exceeds the normal enthusiast hobbyist level. This is some pretty extreme stuff, and there's topics there that go right over my head, and I understand the concepts of what they're talking about, but it'll go like, they'll be talking about some security thing, deep security stuff, hacking ATM machines, and I'm fascinated by it. I can eat that up all day. The possibilities of what they talk about in proof of concepts, you know, hacking cars, it's fascinating stuff. I was there doing an interview with the FBI and the CIA there to recruit for those departments. And so one of the questions I had for them was, would a hacker be happy working for the government? Because the government has these boundaries, these rules. And by definition, a hacker thinks outside of those boundaries. A true hacker doesn't see the box. A true hacker sees everything around the box. And you can't have that rigid government rule set bureaucracy and be a hacker. They're two opposing things. And so I was worried, you know, when you hire a hacker, is that really what you want? Because they're going to do whatever needs to be done to get the job done, whatever that means. And it's probably going to mean breaking some laws and skirting some rules or looking the other way, because you fight fire with fire. That's what your opponent is doing. You can't be the bigger man and play by the rules and win the game when the person is changing the game and making up the rules that you're playing against. And they more or less told me that it's different in that department, and that they permit them to do what they need to do. And I'm not sure I believe it, because I'm not aware of any government agency that has that autonomy or that control. But I would think that would drive a hacker crazy to say, okay, I need you to accomplish this task, but you can't do this. And the hacker will be like, forget it. And I don't know any hackers, nor was I able to interview any hackers who identified themselves as being employed or having been employed by the government agency. So I didn't have the ability to get the other side of it. But the FBI and the CIA and other governmental agencies routinely recruit from places like DEF CON. They are there, and they typically are there undercover. Everybody's undercover. But they'll have a spokesman, they'll have somebody who says, yeah, I'm with the FBI and I am looking, and if you're somebody interested, come to me, I'm recruiting. That's fascinating to me. You know, it's wonderful to see the encouragement of what is essentially a good thing. You know, use your powers for good and not evil, you know. And again, fight fire with fire. You've got guys in charge of the government that don't know this technology. One of the reasons I suspect so many hacking events take place with regards to ransomware and, you know, hospitals and city municipalities getting attacked is they're hiring, the people in charge of doing the hiring don't actually know anything about the job they're hiring for. So if the person they're interviewing has a good looking resume and says all the big words, you're on board. There's no auditing above that level. Or they're stuck on such a limited budget, they don't have a choice but to hire who's ever going to take the money. And then they get hacked and the whole city goes down, or the hospital goes down. It puts people's lives at risk. It puts the public in danger when city services can't be utilized because systems are down, because proper procedures and protocols that were established over a decade ago are just basic stuff not being followed and nobody knows. The guy doing a job doesn't know, or he's not allowed. They claim they don't have the budget, or they don't have the knowledge. And then the whole system goes down. And then everything gets thrown into chaos and they vow changes will be made. And all the poor people working have to work harder going back to a system of pen and paper. And then everything they do in the interim then has to be eventually re-inputted back into the systems when they're back online, whatever that costs, which is a lot more money because it's done on an emergency level rather than an at-will level. And I don't know how long it's going to take for the cities and the governments and the hospitals to start really seeing that as a profit protector. Companies as big as Sony never took it seriously until it happened to them. And I think it's probably never going to happen to Sony again. I think they take PC security or their network security far more seriously. And I think the budget for it, which they didn't have before, I bet you is not even comparable by today. If you compare it, I bet you. But it's a shame that they have to be slammed to the ground for them to stand up as tall as possible. I say stand up as tall as possible now. Don't wait for it. Be proactive, don't be reactive. And Sharon Idle says, yeah, the UK's national health system got hacked with ransomware because nobody bothered to patch the computers. And that's another thing. These patches come out. You guys ask all the time, how do I stop these Windows updates? You're fools to stop Windows updates. You're fools. Because what you're going to end up getting is the thing the update is protecting you from. And that's far worse. Far worse. And that's my opinion. My clients don't get the option. My clients get the updates. And if my clients refuse the updates, they can find another tech, because I have way too many things to do than clean up a mess that could have been avoided. In fear of, I'm afraid of what the update might do, we install it on one machine first, we make sure that it's okay, and then we deploy it to all the machines. And that happens rather quickly. Now, on a larger scale, more time has to be taken. But my clients, they're not that big. We can determine this stuff really, really quickly. The worst thing that can happen is a client of mine gets infected under my watch. It's never happened, and it never will happen, because I don't offer the clients that ability to make that decision. If they know the answer to that decision, then they don't need me. They can do it all themselves. And I don't need my reputation tarnished because a client wants to save $1. They can take their business somewhere else. I take what I do very, very seriously. When companies go down, it affects the employees, it affects the customers, and ultimately, it could be the end of my job, especially if the company can't recover from the losses. Is there any comeback from ransomware? Who do you call? The cops? The cops, many police departments, at least 8 police departments in the United States have been infected with ransomware. Look up the Swansea Police Department in Massachusetts, and you can read the story there. No, there's very little that can be done. You have to be on a more, you have to be at a deeper level in the government, and these resources cost a lot of money, so it's got to be worth the government's expenses to do what needs to be done with intergovernmental agencies. Or you just tick off the wrong guy who happens to also know how to do all this himself or herself, and they just hunt you down themselves, which is what Brian Krebs did at Krebs on Security. You can look up Krebs on Security, Krebs on Security, where Brian just tracked the hacker down on his own, because Brian's a smart guy. And then he handed the information to the FBI, and then they extradited this guy from the Ukraine over to the United States, and he's sitting in jail right now. He thought he was untouchable. No, it depends on how many resources are being thrown to discover and unveil, you know, to lift the rock up and see what's under there. It's not really that hard, at least for people who know how the technology works. If you want to spend the time, and the more the hacker does it, I'm using the word badly, but the more the instigator does it, it's like a thief, right? And so if you're a thief, you probably started stealing something small and you got away with it, and you got a little rush from it, and it makes you want to do it again and maybe take something a little bigger. But every time you do it, you increase your odds of getting caught, and every time you try and escalate it and make it bigger, you're now multiplying the odds of that happening. Give me just a second, guys. Okay, just got another box in. I'm ready for my build. I got a build coming up I haven't told you about yet, but I'm excited about it. And the parts are just starting to arrive. What did I do with my... There I am. All right, what have I missed? Okay, so if there's no other questions in the chat room, I think we'll wrap it up for today. Again, I want to thank Tony over at Silverstone for sending me the unit for testing. And thanks you guys for watching the channel. I appreciate your friendship and all the contributions that have come in, which I want to give another shout out to everybody who's contributed during today's show. Troll McTrollington contributed $14.77 Canadian. He said this one is for tips as well. Thank you. And Winston Anglu, 4chan for Prez. John Brady, 4chan for Prez again. LRCX contributed $20. Thank you for that. Wilkins Rojas, Lourdes Evans, Peter Vigian, Neil Garrett, Darren Cluth, Sharon Idle, Chester Hughes, Tom Jackson, Ian Costello, Steve Gunnick, Super Marula, Shane D, Andrew Dorset, and of course, kicking us off today with the first contribution of the stream, Tony Wallow. Thank you guys again. I really appreciate it very much. And I appreciate your being a part of this amazing, supportive, friendly community that we're creating in a very hostile place. And I don't know if I'll be live again tomorrow. I'm going to try to get live tomorrow. We'll see if all the parts come in that I'm waiting for. I don't think so, but if they do, might have a surprise for you. So that's it for me for now. Thank you guys once again for joining. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.